Hi, Tyler. How are you today?
Hey Andre, how's it going? I'm doing well.
Yeah, I'm well as well. Do you want to say something for people who are preparing for mobile system design interviews? Any tips how to prepare?
How to prepare? Man, I couldn't recommend the mock interviews enough. I don't know if I would be able to do as well as I do without them. They really help a lot. I mean, you can find advice online, but going through a step-by-step process with a time constraint really has been the best thing for me.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, thank you. All right, let's get into the problem. So today we're solving mobile system design problem, hotel booking app. So what we need to do you see the mockup on screen?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, cool. So we have four screens today.
Right.
The first one is the search, where we input our destination, such as London, UK, the dates of check-in and check-out, number of
Right.
guests, which is typically a number, and a search button. So when you click on the search, you go to the next screen, which is a list of hotels, where for each hotel we show the name, location, price, rating, and then when you open a specific one, you see the like a list of pictures, so a small
Yeah.
gallery, and amenities and rooms. So there
Right.
would be like multiple different rooms, and you need to choose one of those and reserve. Once you
Okay.
reserve, you need to you have like 15 minutes to confirm your reservation by paying for it.
Okay, so doing a reservation locks that room for a set amount of time, and then we can, if that time passes, it's sort of like given up,
Yeah,
and the
that's
user will have
correct.
to start the flow again, essentially.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. All right. So a few things jump out to me right away. The search field here in the destination. Are we saying that that's just a user generated string, or is that some sort of drop down that the user picks from? Um, what do we what do we want to do there? Because dealing with user generated text, especially, can be tricky. I'm wondering if that should be some sort of autocomplete
Yeah, yeah.
system, but that can get a little tricky in and of itself. So, should we just assume that the user is going to type in uh, the correct text, or should it be some sort of autocomplete?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Let's actually do an autocomplete feature. Maybe we
Okay.
can do a simplified version first. If we have time in the end, we can discuss how to extend it. But yes, it would be nice to show when you're typing, for example, potential cities or hotel names.
Okay. So let me just start taking some notes on requirements here. Would like autocomplete for destinations. Okay. And then the next thing that I'm thinking is this hotel list view that we have here. Is this a user controlled sorting in some way? Can I sort by price or rating or like alphabetized by name? Or is this going to be controlled by the backend in some way?
Let's simplify it and just return as already sorted version from the backend.
Okay. And those these green boxes are images. I'm assuming thumbnails. Is the user like in the hotel list? Are they able to click on that image and see a blown up version of that, or does are we saying like clicking on the hotel list, no matter where you click, is going to bring you into the hotel details? And then
Let's not make images here expandable
okay,
for
yeah, that's what
simplicity,
I would have gone with
but
as well.
we can actually do expandable versions on a third screen.
Yeah, I think that that makes a lot of sense. Make the details expandable. There'll still be thumbnails, obviously, in the initial view, but you could expand them there. And then I noticed the amenity section in the hotel details is a little sparse. Is that just going to be like a list of strings saying, like free Wi-Fi, coffee in the room, or are there like, if I'm thinking about times I go to a like book a hotel on Expedia or something, there'll be like little icons next to amenities. Should we have something like that, or do we want to simplify it and just say it's a list of strings?
Let's do icons plus image plus strings.
Icons plus strings. Okay. Okay, and then we'll need to fill out some detail for each room as well. I'm thinking something like there'll be a thumbnail image with like number of like beds available, types of beds available, that sort of thing?
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah, okay. Rooms will have a thumbnail plus room metadata, we'll say. Okay, and then we can only reserve one room at a time, right? We can't just say like, I'm gonna reserve this, this, and this, even though I have, say, like 3 guests, I'm gonna reserve 4 rooms. That doesn't make sense. So everyone's just reserving one room at a time.
Yeah, let's assume we can reserve only one room at a time, but it's
Okay.
important to prevent concurrent bookings by multiple people. So we'll need to
Right,
deal
yeah,
with
which
that.
is why we need to have a process where we inform the backend that this room is currently reserved for a specific amount of time. And then getting out of the nitty-gritty and pulling back a little bit, how many daily active users do we expect that this kind of app would have? How many people are going to be working at the same time?
Let's assume it's a high-scale application, so something around 10 million daily active users.
Okay. And what kind of offline mode do you think we should support here? I can't think much, but you might want to cache some of these images so you don't have to fetch hotel data every time, especially if it's like a really popular hotel. Maybe you're going back there over and over again. So that may be the only offline mode I think you would need to support, just some local image caching. But is there something else that you think we might want to support offline mode for?
So first of all, let's separate out offline mode and caching. So we can cache
Right.
stuff, but user won't see that. So I don't think it makes sense to implement offline mode here because you won't be
Yeah.
able to see room availability. The only thing that would be nice to have is like your reservation. You should be able to see your reservation in offline mode. But we don't have
Right.
like
That
a,
does make sense.
yeah, it does
Yeah.
make sense, but we don't have a separate screen for that, so we can like cover it briefly. Yeah, but don't worry too much about it.
Yeah. Okay. I think that covers all of my questions just based off our initial look here. So let me just say really quickly how I plan to like address these requirements. So I think first I'm going to describe, because this is, we're building out an iOS application here, but we have communication with backend systems. So first I want to talk about how I think the app should communicate with the backend, what data models are going to be required during that communication, and then after that, I'll create an architecture diagram and talk a little bit about like the major components of the system. And then I think from there we can do some deep dives. That
Yeah, sounds
sounds
good.
good to you.
Yeah,
All
sounds
right.
good.
All right. So let me move this over and let's talk a little bit about backend communication. Um, I think that the communication is pretty straightforward. I think we can just use a standard REST API here. We don't need to. There actually will probably be some interesting like event-based communication involved with when we make the reservation. We don't want to be the one in charge of keeping track of time for how long the reservation is on hold for. That should be a backend responsibility. But the
Okay.
backend, I think, should inform us in some way, like, your time is up, right? So I think we should use some sort of REST API and then some sort of event uh, based solution. But for now, I'm just going to start with the REST API. So let me talk a little bit about the routes that are going to be involved in this. So I'll just start left to right. We need to start at the search screen. And that's going to be like a get route, right? Like we're going to provide the backend with all of our information that the user has given us, the destination, the check-in and check-out date, number of guests, and it's going to return us hotel listings. So it could be something like, we could just put all these parameters within the URL as query params, or we could space it out like nice and neat with backslashes. I'm just going to go with query params for now. So let's just say that that's a string. And then we would also need We would need a check-in. That'll be a date set up as a string. We'll have check out. And then we would also have the like guest count, right? So that would just be some integer, right? So I'm just going to go through all of the routes first, and then I want to talk about data models, because the data models can then feed back and inform us a little bit more about maybe what's involved in construction of these routes. So we have the get route for the hotel list. Within that hotel list, the user is going to click on a hotel listing.
Yeah,
And
sorry to
then,
interrupt you.
yeah, no problem.
What about the fact that we can have thousands of hotels for a certain query?
Right. Yes. Good point. So we obviously, a place like London, right? It's going to have a huge number of hotels. We can't just like make a request for all of the hotels in London and expect to have a good user experience. So we need to involve some sort of pagination with this. And that can be like the backend, when we make a request, can deliver back to us some token that we like. It delivers us like a certain number to start with. It feeds us back a token, and then in every subsequent request to the backend, we include that token, and we could also include some limit. So like, give me the next 25. It responds. So this would be like an offset limit pagination, or we could also do what I was talking about with like the token, some serialized pagination. But because the backend controls the sorting here, I think an offset limit pagination method is probably the easiest thing to do. So we could have this route like have the offset limit be optional to start, and then it can just deliver us the first 25, right? And then we could say, from this offset, give me the next 25 and the next 25. So I can describe how I think this should look really quickly. Like, so this route, right, is going to return us a hotel listing object. And I think what is involved in that is going to be an offset, which will be just an integer. And then what we'll do is we'll have it's going to be like a list of hotels, right? Or it needs to be a list of hotel listings. So this will be hotel listings, and it'll contain hotel listings, which would be like just a hotel listing, an array of hotel listings, which would look something like contain the hotel ID as a string, the location that we'll need, which will just be another string, a price for a decimal. I'm just filling out everything we have in our hotel listing object. That'll be a string, and then we'll have a media URL that we'll use to get the image data, because it's not sending us the image data as like raw bytes. It's going to send us a URL, which we'll use to pull in thumbnails. So
for location here, you want to show just address, because it is a string. I don't see latitude and longitude, so I would assume it is address.
It's definitely just like a general location, right? And that can be decided on the back end what they want to show. Do they want to show the street address, like, one somewhere street or something like that? Or it could be like more general, like downtown or something like that. That way the back end can control what goes there. Yeah, I think that's probably a better way to do it. So yeah, we'll have the offset, and then optionally within our URL here, we can provide the offset, and we can provide the limit. Okay, so that's going to cover that route for now. I'm going to talk a little bit about once we're in the hotel list and we're paginating through, the user is going to select a listing, and we then need to get hotel details, right? So I think we can stay on this hotels base route here. And what we will need to do is pass in the hotel ID. And because that's just one parameter, I think we can just stick with that. So from what we're going to get for hotel details is a little more complicated than our hotel listing, because we're going to get multiple media URLs. We're going to get amenities, which are going to have their own media URLs as icons. And we can talk a little bit about that, I think. Does that need to be something that the system gets like per hotel detail, or are amenities sort of standardized across the hotel chain? And we can say, get that once on app start and then use it whenever we see that amenity within a hotel listing. Just something to think about. But for now, let's fill out this hotel object that we're going to get here. So I think that what the structure of a hotel object should look like is something like this. We'll have a hotel ID, which will be a string. We'll have an amenity or amenities, which should, if the amenity needs to be more complicated than just a list of strings, then we'll need to represent it as its own object. And we'll also need to have a list of rooms, which will need to be represented as a room object. And then we also need to include the media URLs at the top. We're going to receive both thumbnails and full size URLs here, because we need to click the thumbnail and to expand it into a larger version. So I think the media URL will probably be just some sort of nested object that'll contain like thumbnails, which will just be an array of strings, and then like full size images or something.
Yep, sounds good.
Right. So where did my route go? So let's continue, right? Let's talk first about the rooms, because I think that's the more interesting aspect here. So we'll have a room object, which will need to contain a room ID. And then it also contains its own metadata, right? So like number of beds, it's going to contain some media URLs. I think probably only one. We don't need to go crazy with like another nested carousel of images within the room. So let's just say it's just a single string. I think that's probably good for the room. We don't need to go crazy with the metadata. If we wanted to like add the ability to make this a little more future-proof, we could like have a field just called metadata that's its own nested like object that
Don't
can
worry
be
about
expanded. Yeah, I think that's out of scope for now, but just throwing that out there. And then for the amenities, I think so. Amenity will want. We could do something like amenity ID, like amenity description, and that way, like we could just assume that the app has gotten all the amenity icons at the beginning of the app load, and these would be really small icons, so it could get all of them just at once, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe there's 100 different amenities, but they're really tiny. So we could just do something like amenity ID, have that be a string, and then amenity description, have that be a string. And we could include like the icon URL here, just in case, like, I don't know, maybe something went wrong. And like we need to get the icon URL for this amenity. But the hope here is that the app will just be able to rely on the amenity ID and go into its like internal storage and pull that icon out. So I think that covers everything we've talked about here with regards to hotel rooms amenities. So the rooms, hotels get big, but they don't get like thousands of rooms big. I don't. Maybe I haven't been staying in the right hotels. I don't know. So I don't think we need to paginate the rooms. We can just say that when we get a call for like a hotel description, it's going to deliver us all the available rooms. We don't need to worry about
Yeah, that's fine.
paginating that. Yeah. So from here, I'm going to say the next step is like the user's in the hotel details and they're going to click reserve on a room. So what does that look like? I think that's going to be a post to a new route that will say, we'll call it like reservations, right? And we'll need to provide some sort of object for this post. So I think what we'll want to do is just create like a reservation object, right? So we can have, I'll put it up here, we'll have something called like reservation. And I think what needs to be included in there is your hotel ID, which will be a string, and your room ID, right?
Okay.
And I think you probably want to include your guest count, which will just be an integer. So this is what I think the client is going to send up to the backend. And then what we will retrieve from there.
I have a question here.
Yeah, please.
Is it possible to accidentally like double book here? For example, I don't know, something went wrong in the app or with internet connection. Maybe there was internet lag and then you've sent the same request twice on the backend. Would it create two potentially reservations? Let's say in the hotel there are like two available rooms and you just, two like similar rooms and you book two of those. So how to prevent double booking?
Right. Okay. I think so you're talking about like, because I think the case where you tap the same button twice, right? The same room reserved twice is probably pretty easily handled. The case where you would tap one room and then another room, right? That's probably the case that's maybe a little more challenging. What you could do, because I think what you could do to prevent the first one is very simple. I think once you hit that post route, the backend is going to respond with an exact duplicate of the reservation object, but with a reservation ID attached to it.
Okay.
And then a copy of everything else that you had in the initial request. So if you click the same room again, right, the backend can easily tell that because you would include the same hotel ID and the same room ID. So you would respond with a reservation, just the reservation ID that you were going to send anyway.
Yeah, so we can check that on the backend.
Right.
But the question is like, do we want to enable users to book multiple rooms or not?
No, like we said at the beginning, we don't, like, the user should not be able to book multiple rooms. What can happen on the front end is like you can do front end tricks to prevent this from happening. Like even in cases of like load network, if you click a button, you just disable all other buttons on the front end. That's one like completely front end facing trick that you could do.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting. So first of all, I think I missed the point that it is possible to book multiple rooms in the same hotel. Let's say you're traveling with a like huge family, there is like a family event. So in that case, you'll probably want to book like multiple rooms in the same hotel.
Oh, okay. I thought we had said earlier that you were going to book one room only.
Yeah, I missed that point. Don't worry.
Okay.
And second point is, what if there is another solution. What if we add an idempotency key with a reservation? So when we create a reservation object on the client, we like generate local ID and send it with the request. And in that way, if we have a duplicate request, we can check that ID on the backend. And yeah,
that's a good idea. Usually, I'm more partial to having the backend generate all IDs. But I think that that's a pretty, I can't really see where that would go wrong, especially if we're sending the same key multiple times. Like
So
the backend's going to see it.
yeah, sorry for interrupting. So I
No,
meant
go ahead.
using both local and server ID. So obviously, I'm not saying like to not
Yeah,
use
we're
the
not
backend
generating the
ID.
reservation ID. We're just generating an identity key. I think that makes a lot of sense. So that would that really only needs to be included within the reservation object that we send. So
Yeah,
like
you can
we'll
call it
say,
like a local ID or yeah.
yeah, local ID string, and then what the reservation sends back to us is still the same as what I said before. We're going to get our reservation ID and then all the details that we included in the initial request. Yeah, I
Okay,
think that's a
sounds
good
good.
solution. So now that I'm understanding a little better that we are able to book multiple rooms, is this going to work like the user can scroll down the list, hit reserve, keep scrolling, hit reserve, keep scrolling, hit reserve?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, let's do that if
Let's do
possible,
that.
if we have time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a problem. So that really the only thing that changes, right, is that like we're requesting multiple rooms. Like this room ID becomes like,
Yep.
yeah, we could send each request one at a time. But like, I don't think that we need to do that. We can just batch all of that and like have a button in the like bottom right hand corner of the hotel details page and just hit like proceed or something like that, right? That way we can batch everything at once. We don't need to do everything one at a time. Um,
Yeah, sounds good. Sorry, we're a little bit like running out of time. Let's talk about the timer. How to handle the timer for our reservation because we need to have a hold for 15 minutes.
we need to have a hold for 15 minutes. So what I think what needs to happen here is that up in the UI, we'll have some sort of timer running, but that's not actually in charge of like keeping holding the reservation. The backend needs to be in charge of holding the reservation. So I think that the what I want to do here is sort of what I talked about a little bit earlier, is that we need to have some event based system to control so that the backend can inform us that time's up. We have a few options here. We could do like polling, some sort of polling solution. There are WebSockets for bidirectional communications. And what I'm going to suggest is my preferred solution here would just be to use some sort of server-side event because it gives us the half of WebSockets that we really want, which is for the server to be able to tell us something when it needs to tell us something. I think maybe my second solution would probably be like some sort of long polling. Like as soon as we hit the payment screen, like we start a long polling request and that just stays open until like time runs out and then it would just end. So it would be a long polling of one, which is why I don't think it really makes sense. And I think we should go with opening up some sort of server side event. And
Wait. Let me challenge you here. So first
yeah,
of all,
please.
do we need to like get updates like frequently every second? Can we
No,
simplify it and maybe just send the timestamp when the reservation hold ends from the backend to the client, and then just check the timestamp on the client?
right. Yeah. So
In that way, we can.
exactly like a timestamp needs to come from the back end, right? Like to indicate that the reservation has ended, correct? Some indication from the back end. And that's sort of what I'm getting at is like, how does that timestamp get from the back end to the front end? And I don't want the front end to just sit there polling, looping, like saying like, am I done? Am I done? Am I done? I prefer it if like the back end can just send that to me over an open connection when it's actually done. Does that
Wait.
make sense, or
But
do you, or are we not? Are we talking past each other a little bit?
but can we return it just as a response from our post reservations object? So the moment we create like a reservation, our post, we
Okay, so
return
I
back.
see what I think I see what you're saying now. You prefer like if we just like expiration time,
Yes.
and that can just be a string, right? So I think what I was going for was a little more like let the back end lead and say like you give us an expiration time, and I'll as the front end I will honor that expiration time, and I think that could probably work. But like if we wanted to really make sure, like having the backend say, no, you're done now, could be another way to go. But I guess if we also like included like the backend would have that same sort of information because it's sending us the expiration time. So maybe I'm sort of trying to over engineer things here a little bit, and we can just rely on the expiration time delivered from the backend and
Yeah,
say that
don't
that's
worry.
enough.
Don't worry, I
Yeah.
think we're fine here. So we
Okay.
have our reservation. What else do we need for our API?
So the last thing we're going to need is payment, but that is something that I would not roll myself. That's something I want to rely on like a third party um, software to do. So I would integrate something like the Stripe SDK into the application. So that's who I'm going to be sending all my like the name, credit card, billing address. They, in response, will send me some sort of confirmation token that payment will be received. And then that's what I need to send to the backend potentially in order to say like my reservation, the reservation is completed.
Okay.
Um, so that's going to be, we can just say it's like reservations, like payment, right? And we can say, really, it's just it's an object of one. It's just going to contain like a payment token, right? We're not ever collecting and storing in our own backend like user financial details. So let's just say that's going to be another string. So this would be the extent of the API. We are going a little bit long here, but I think there were a lot of details to cover.
Yeah.
Unless you see anything else that you think we really need to hit, I'd like to move into the system architecture diagram, and that could also bring to light maybe a few more things we need to talk about with regards to our communications with the backend.
Yeah, let's do that. Sounds good.
All right. So the way I'm going to structure this architecture diagram is I'm going to sort of take a layered approach. There's going to be three main layers to the application. There's going to be a storage layer. There's going to be what I call a services layer. And there's going to be a presentation layer. So those are the three main layers of our application. And just for clarity, I'm also going to include a network layer that lies outside of the application. That's just contains the details of what we have sort of just talked about. So I'll go left to right here. There's going to be some REST API that implements the details of what we just talked about above. There's also going to need to be some sort of object service such as S3 to retrieve our
Why do we need
images.
that?
That's where our images will probably most likely be stored. So when we receive URLs, right, for rooms or amenities or really everything that goes into the app, that URL we talk directly to an object service to download the image because, like we said before, we're not receiving images directly within the response. Okay, that's just sort of for clarity, and it lies outside of the application. Moving actually into the application, we have this storage layer, which is responsible for communicating sort of with the outside world over our network, and then internally where we will implement the offline mode features that we need or any caching that we need, right? So let's talk about what that would look like. We would want a dedicated component for communicating with our REST API. Let's call that our network manager, right? And that's gonna be responsible for communicating directly with our REST API, right? We also have some local caching that we want to do. We talked about caching images, thumbnails, that sort of thing. So there's a few options for that. We could store directly into the file system. We could rely on like session caching that different network services such as like URL session offered natively. I think for our own fine-grained control, I prefer to just like take our images, manage them ourselves on the file system. So we'll add some file system manager.
Okay.
And then we also said that we wanted to you want the ability to be able to look at reservations even when the user's offline. Like we're not going to allow the ability to like search and create new reservations or anything like that. But like we've already made one, it'd be nice to allow the user to look at it offline. And I know it's potentially a little outside scope because we're not going to have a screen dedicated to that. But I'll just include what component would be involved there. The reservation is a structured object. We can just throw it into a table. And I think like the easiest way to do that, especially on iOS, is just to use core data. We could go lower and access the lower level SQLite database if we wanted to, or store it in flat files. But I think the APIs for core data are good enough that just having just talking directly to core data makes the most sense. So we have this storage layer, and I think that's all the components of our storage layer that we will need.
Okay.
But let me look into the services layer a little bit, and we could reveal something else. So for a service layer, what services are we actually offering? We have search, and we have the creation of reservations. We have payments, right? So what if we just as a first pass broke those down into their own services, right? We could provide a search service which would communicate with the network manager and then directly talk over and then deliver hotel listings to the presentation layer. I think that's a pretty good way to start things out.
Yep, sounds good.
So we could have a search service, right? That'll talk to the network manager. It only needs to really communicate with the network manager. It doesn't require any file system access. We could have a reservation service for actually communicating with the network manager again, but that's responsible for like generating that identity token that we talked about earlier and keeping track of time. Let's see, reservation service. So that's also going to need to communicate with our network manager. It's going to need to communicate with core data manager. Okay, so I think we'll also want a payment service. Although, like I said earlier, the payment service, I think, is going to be handled more by some third-party library, because there's too much that goes into payments for us to be able to handle this within the scope of the app, right? So what if I did something like this?
Yes, we're using third-party library, but we still need to integrate it somewhere in our app. And
Correct.
we need probably to show UI and other stuff.
Absolutely. So I think how I'll represent this within the services layer is with two boxes. We'll do something like we'll have our payment service, correct?
Okay.
And that's going to serve really as a wrapper over the third-party provider that we're going to be using. So let me see. So that's sort of what I'm getting at. We'll have a payment service that's exposed to our presentation layer, and it acts as a wrapper sort of as a pass-through for the data into the payment provider that we get from our presentation layer, and then like isolate only the specific interface that we need from the payment provider to the presentation layer. I think there's more that's going to go into the services layer, but let me talk a little bit about the presentation layer, because it's not a small portion of the app at all, right? So we have 4 screens here, and based off of this, the way this application works, we have a couple interesting options. So what I'm thinking here is like, do we want to go Swift UI focused? Do we want to go UIKit focused? I would lean towards Swift UI. Just looking at the apps right now, it's not particularly complicated. Where I think UIKit potentially shines a little bit here is that when you're dealing with pagination, the UIKit has a lot more control over the view lifecycle and the specific like table view lifecycle. So you can know specifically like what row you're at. So you can say, you know, I'm very close to the next place I would want to make a call for the next offset and limit. So that it could be useful to have UIKit there. Everywhere else, I would want Swift UI. So maybe what we can do is use UIKit within Swift UI just for that specific screen and allow us to sort of like reap the benefits of both. So that's sort of what I'm going to say up here, is that this will be like Swift UI plus UIKit. And so in terms of architecture, I'm going to go with an MVVM architecture for this presentation layer. So that means we're going to have views, and views are going to have view models. Those view models will then talk to our services to fulfill the functionality that we need. Okay, so why don't I start by defining some view models? So we'll have, for instance, a search view model. We'll want like a hotel listing view model.
Mm-hmm.
We'll want a reservation view model, or more a hotel details view model, but I think I'm going to stick with like a reservation view model.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
And then we'll also have a payments view model. Okay, so wiring up the dependencies here. The search view model will talk to the search service. The hotel listing view model will need to talk to, okay, so our services need to also, I think the search service can also be responsible for getting hotel details, because it sort of is cohesive with the idea of like, we get all the listings and then we deliver you your specific listing. I think that's, you disagree?
What about like auto-completion and prefetching stuff for auto-completion?
Right,
So
yeah.
I feel like
At that point, the search service might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed.
yeah.
So the reservation service is already responsible for retrieving, or responsible for like managing all of the reservations, generating identity tokens, and then like keeping track of like time potentially here as well. So like I don't want to like overload the reservation service with that as well. So I think what I would do in that case is create a new service, and we can just plain and simple call it like hotel service.
Yeah, sounds good.
And that hotel service will also be responsible for talking to the network manager. All right, so we have a reservation view model here.
Mhm.
The reservation view model talks to our reservation service. We have a payments view model is going to be responsible for talking to the payment service. So there's one more model that we need, or one more service that I think we need to talk about based off of this, and that's going to be we're going to need some kind of image service, because involved in all of this, whenever a service is returning objects to a view model, it's always returning, or often returning, like an image URL. So I think it makes sense to have a dedicated service that these view models can hook into to say, like, I got this image URL, please retrieve it for me, right? And so what that image service will do is it doesn't need to talk to the REST API service. It's really only going to talk to directly to the URL that it receives. So it's sort of going to bypass the storage layer and talk directly to whatever object service contains the media that we're interested in. And then it's going to potentially cache that within our file system manager, right?
Would you cache images forever, or do you need some sort of time to live policy?
Right. So I don't think you want to cache images forever. That could get potentially like pretty bloated, you know? So I think a time to live policy makes sense. The image service could be responsible for that, but that might be a little bit out of its purview as well. We could have another dedicated service responsible purely for managing like old cache data, right?
Let's simplify. Let's put that logic into image service. So the question I
Yeah,
have here is, how would you actually understand what is like the timestamp for each image? So I guess you would need to have a timestamp for each image when it was downloaded or saved to disk to clean it up later.
correct. Yeah. So when we save to disk, we don't need to save like just the image. We can store it like within a folder, like with given metadata, and you could store it that way. You could also like have an index just as like a key value pair that's like a sort essentially says uh, like a time and then like IDs of images that need to be cleaned up, right? So you could think about it like multiple ways. Like, and I think I prefer the second approach. That way the image service isn't constantly scanning over the user's disk, like running over the user's disk, looking for image looping, looking for images that are old. Like we would probably store it in some other preferences file, either as like a list or as a some sort of like key value pair store. If that's the case, we would need to add something to the storage layer that's like um, that can probably live as its own file within the file system, but we could also potentially put it in core data as its own table, and that way we can say, you know, we could run a query and say, get me all images with time to live that have like exceeded whatever my current understanding is. And I actually think I like that solution better, of like having a table in core data manager that stores metadata about the images we have cached.
Yeah, sounds
How does
good.
that sound to you?
Yeah, sounds good. We can do that. Let's switch gears and quickly talk about search autocomplete. So there are
Yeah.
multiple ways to implement it. What would you do?
Right. Yeah. This is probably actually one of the trickier features, I think, within the entire application. So that's going to involve is we're going to need to constantly be streaming like substrings up to a server that's going to need to be sending us search results, right? So my first thought comes to, we need to open some sort of bidirectional communication between the application and the backend. Um, so that the user has like a fast search experience. We
Um,
like
that would be too expensive to implement like WebSockets on the backend just for search autocomplete.
for
Are there
10
any
million daily
ways?
active users.
Yeah, are there any ways to do it like in a more cheaper way, a more simpler
Um,
way?
so the other way, which is the way I didn't want to go at first, that I think of is like if we had another like get route, right, where like we're just passing in tokens like as they come in, and then the backend is responding with like nearby locations. Um, they're all, you know what? I'm actually also thinking like there might be an iOS solution to this. And like, what if we took advantage of like core location? Because I'm pretty sure core location has built in like search for, but I don't know if it's based off of like substrings and if it fulfills that feature, but it could be an interesting thing to think about. But just based off of what we've
Yeah.
been talking about, let's think about like
The
we're
problem
within
with the problem with core location is that you not only need to suggest cities but and
right,
countries, but also like hotel names, and
right.
probably there are certain like popular hotels that you should show
Yeah, and we,
there.
we would we would want some control over like the order in which like items get sent back to the user for suggestion, right? So I'm thinking that like we would need just to communicate like through some sort of get route, like substrings up to the back end that are going to send us like lists of suggestions over and over again, just over HTTP. I'm wondering if there's like some sort of like caching solution that we can put in between to say like um, if you see this substring like within the cache and that's keyed, like have a list of um, pre-prepared suggestions for the user so we can get that data very fast. Those are sort of what I'm thinking of. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I think we definitely need to prefetch certain like locations, popular hotels, possibly. In that case,
Yeah.
we don't need to wait for the network request to show those suggestions.
Okay. Okay. I think I see. So, like I was talking about with like the amenity icons, like on app load, we could prefetch like all of these locations, like London, UK, like New York City, United States, right? And then popular hotel names within those locations, have those stored locally, and then what we would be hitting would be some sort of local database. If we don't have that, then we potentially go out over the network.
Yep, yep, that sounds good. Okay.
I think that sounds like a really good idea. um,
Yeah. By the
I
way, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt your train of thought. So I think we forgot to add views to our diagram as well.
Yes, so let's add the views. We're gonna have 4 views. um, and it's sort of like I said before, the each view has a corresponding view model. So this would be our search view. This is going to be like our hotel listing view.
Hmm.
And so the search view will have a search view model. The hotel listing view will talk to the hotel listing view model. The reservation view will talk to the reservation view model. And the payment view is going to talk to the payment view model. So I think that's pretty straightforward. The only thing I'm thinking about is that the reservation view and the payment view, we talked about like the reservation view view model talking to the reservation service, which is in charge of like keeping track of the lifetime, and that lifetime accompanies the payment view, right? So there is some coordination that needs to happen when we talk to when we click that button to reserve a room and then click proceed to payment view. The reservation view model is forwarding something to the reservation service.
Okay.
But now we're in the payment view and have a payment view model. I'm wondering if, like, in order to facilitate that coordination between the reservation view and the payment view, if we could have a layer in front of the payments view model and the reservation view model to sort of act as a coordinator. So the coordinator would sort of wrap both and take in like the reservation information, forward it to the reservation view model, and then also have the context it needs to talk to the have the coordination it needs to talk to the payments view model and then subsequently the payment service. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we need to pass the reservation ID next when we open the next screen for payment. In that case,
Right.
we'll be able to save that in the view model. So we can use a coordinator for that.
We could also just have the payments view model talk to the reservation service as well. That's not illegal within our because if the payments view model receives a reservation ID,
Yeah.
like we could have some sort of like callback or combined flow where the payments view model could just subscribe to something within the reservation service and say, like, I need to track this reservation ID. And that way, and I think that's probably a cleaner solution, just saying it out loud. That if the reservation model talks to the reservation service, the payments view model receives a reservation ID when we transition from the reservation view to the payment view, and can then subscribe to what it needs to subscribe to within the reservation service, given that reservation ID.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything you'd like to dive deeper into?
Yeah, I want to quickly talk about the reservation holds. So,
Right.
so coming back to this thing that I mentioned in the beginning of the mock interview, how we can actually prevent multiple people from booking the same room.
Right. Right. So I think we covered it earlier a little bit when we were talking about creating the reservation, right? So we said when we make the post to the reservations route and include our hotel ID and our room ID, um, we like at that point the backend has a lock. It knows the room ID, it knows the hotel ID, so it has a lock on those IDs that were requested, and needs to then return the reservation ID if it was successful. Now, what if the user includes in their room the like something that was already taken? Um, the the backend would need to respond with some kind of error message and send the user back to the hotel detail screen. Alternatively, you would hope, or not hope, but the way the backend would be structured would be that when you request a hotel, you don't even deliver the user rooms that were already taken. But two users could be on the hotel detail screen at the same time, right? And one is slightly faster than the other, books a room. Now I'm trying to book a room that they literally just called, right?
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I need to then what I would do is like I need to send the user back and have them redo everything. Like I'm not going to send them back and say, "Oh, just choose one more room. This one was wrong." Like that would be too finicky and complicated. And I'll say like send them back to the hotel detail screen and just say like I think there was an error processing your reservation request. Please try again or something like that. Like that feels like a bad user experience, but I think it's better than the alternative where we say, oh, this one specific room got booked. Like, please choose just one more room. I think having like indicating an error and then having them go back and refill in the reservation is probably the way I would go there.
Yep, sounds good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, last question. How would you build your dependency graph for this application? Because you have a lot of entities.
Yeah. It's something to think about. So this is going to be, if we think of the dependency injection as part of the architecture of the application, this sort of sits above everything. We have all of these dependencies. There's not so many components that you couldn't just manually wire everything yourself, but apps have a tendency to grow. Like, we might as well start now and say, we could wire it ourselves. There are third-party libraries such as like Swinject that we could use as a dependency injection manager, or we could roll our own sort of dependency injection service where we like create a dependency injection manager class that like subscribes certain classes to certain other classes. So we have a few options there. I think personally the cleanest is I've used Swinject before and I think it's pretty clean. That's what I would go with. But we do have multiple options.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. Thank you for your time. Please give me a minute to finish up my feedback, and I will present it to you. All right. Let me copy my feedback to the right from the diagram. Do you see my feedback?
Yeah.
So first of all, thank you for doing this mock interview again.
Of course.
Yeah, so the overall decision is higher for senior role. I think you did well, with a few small comments here and there. So my feedback is divided into 4 parts: problem navigation, solution design, technical proficiency, and technical communication. Oops, let me fix a few things. Yep. You led the interview, you had a clear opinion what to do next, that was good. You asked good questions in the beginning to reduce ambiguity, especially you had a good question about search autocomplete right away. You found that problem, that was good. So you identified it. So you identified and focused on main problems, that was good. Main problems here are reservation holds, payments, and again, search autocomplete. You had a good organization of the problem space. I like the fact that you stated beforehand that you want to do the API and data model first and then the high-level diagram. Timing was reasonably good, but it can be slightly improved. I wanted to fit a little bit more questions. But generally that was fine. So for solution design, the most important thing is that we come up with a working solution. You did really well on API and data model design, so your REST endpoints were reasonable. The thing that can be improved is that our discussion around reservation holds logic. So you suggested, so you initially suggested SSE, but then we had a discussion and realized that it would be better to use a server-generated timestamp. And it's really important to talk with the interviewer and be ready to discuss your solutions and step back sometimes. You did that perfectly, so that's actually a good one. Also, you did well on image loader, image service questions, specifically for caching and cleaning up the cache. You did well on the hotel service, adding it later to your diagram. For search autocomplete, I guess you initially started with WebSockets. That probably would have been too much for this problem. But later we discussed it again back and forth and ended up with a good solution with prefetching and showing up suggestions. Yes, you practically handle scalability, suggesting caching here and there. You designed with UX in mind, for example, using different image resolutions. Also, you deployed needed architectural patterns such as DI and VVM coordinator, facade for payments provider, SDK, that was good. So for technical proficiency, you did really well. I don't have many comments. Like, the only comment that I have is about the UI kit for one screen. So I agree that UI kit maybe works slightly better for that scenario, but I would probably not use UIKit just for one screen. I would use Swift UI everywhere.
Yeah, don't introduce the additional complexity. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, for technical communication also you did really well. You explained ideas clearly, logically, you made complex topics easily digestible, you responded well to my questions and feedback. So again, the one small comment here is that sometimes you were too focused on the problem, and
Fair
I
enough.
wanted to ask a few questions, but you were so focused, I didn't want to interrupt you. So yeah, so this is maybe more of a tip for people watching, is that be mindful of the interviewer. All right. Any questions about the feedback or the solution?
No, I think it all makes sense, and I think it's totally fair. Like sometimes I was trying to like oversolve the problem, like, oh, let's use server-side events when generated timestamp was fine, or let's use WebSockets when we could have just gotten a bunch of useful data at the start. I think those are much cleaner and simpler solutions. So I totally take the feedback. It makes a lot of sense.
Okay,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you for doing this, and yeah, have a nice rest of the day.
Yeah, good talking to you, Andre.